See if that fixed it. Alright, I hit go live. It should be streaming to this stream and no other stream. Let's see if it's happening. Let's see if it's working. There it is. If that fixed it. Alright. Let's put it in presentation go live. It should be streaming to this stream and no other stream. Let's see if it's happening. Let's see if it's working.
So,
there it is.
How am I supposed to follow along for which slide it is?
I'll be putting it up here. You'll see it.
Okay.
Put it in presentation go live. It should be streaming to this stream and no other stream. Let's see if it's happening. Let's see if it's working.
So,
there it is.
How am I supposed to follow along for which slide it is?
I'll be putting it up here. Okay, now I've got to apparently go back and end the other stream, which for some reason it's double streaming. So let's. Oh my gosh, YouTube, you're ridiculous. I barely ever use the streaming service of YouTube, so I don't really know much about how to use it. So I'm sitting here trying to manage. Why do I have multiple screens going? I don't know. Let's see. Ask it. No, go away. Stop trying to teach me it. Just give me the fucking button. How do I stop the stream to the other thing? Oh my gosh, this is so annoying. I really wish the con had done this instead of putting it on me.
Okay, I'm able to see the live stream here by going to the YouTube link in the Lost in Room details.
Yes.
I, of course, have the audio muted for that.
That's not the thing that's broken. It's another thing that's broken right now, and I'm rushing to try and fix it without any, with barely any experience on this. Why is there no way to? Is there a way to cut it? I want to cut it. I want to stop it. I don't want to delete it. I want to stop it. It needs to stop. How do I stop it? That is the question. How do I stop this other stream?
I see an exit button.
I found it. Got it. There we go. Okay. It was. I don't know why it was doing that. You'd think it would end the stream when you stop streaming, but it just keeps going apparently. All right. Here's HarmonyCon Online, the Friendship is Optimum panel, and we have the thing up, and we're live. So that's good. All right. Cool, and we've got 2 people watching right now on YouTube. Just so they know, they can watch this in Discord. People who are on the Discord, I should have the slideshow that we're going to present from up here in a few seconds. There it is. If you go click on the live next to my name, you will see the slideshow. Whee! There we go. Okay. So we're ready to go, I guess. Let's do one last check. Everyone's here. Everyone can talk. We have gotten the announcements.
Need more monitors.
All right. This was the thing I meant to have us up on. It's just this panel, because all you need to do is say, "I wish to immigrate to Equestria," and all your values will be satisfied. Everything will be consensual, and you won't have a choice. Or will you? No. You
can sound a little more happy about it.
You can sound a little more happy about being turned into a pony forever. Alright. Welcome to the Friendship is Optimal panel. It is a diverse and interactive look at the most realistic and influential horror story on film fiction. So first off, what is Friendship is Optimal? Friendship is Optimal is a hard sci-fi story which someone makes an AI Celestia to run a My Little Pony MMO. So this artificial intelligence, basically it starts designing its own hardware and it becomes smarter than humans, and it eventually decides, you know, it would be easier than satisfying meat humans if I get them all to upload their brains. So it eventually collapses human society and gets everyone to upload, and the story ends with the last person on Earth dying as everyone else is basically inside of this simulation, and then Celestia eats the universe. With ponies. So it's been praised throughout like the AI community and all that for talking about the real world fears about AI from actual AI researchers, that yes, an AI could become way more intelligent than a human and actually become like a threat to us in some way, however way we want to do it. There have been over 100 spin-offs. It has been very well received. It's been reblogged by a bunch of AI people. And the thing about it is it's all based on real science. It is all stuff that could theoretically actually happen. But if you're here, you probably already know that. So, this panel is a group of writers and AI researchers, or research type people, I should say. So we're writers and we're computer scientists and all that. And we're here to talk about Friendship is Optimal, both as a work of horror and a real-life dangerous scenario. The AI Singularity. My name is Raccoon. I put this panel together. I'm a writer and a computer scientist. I'm a moderator on the Optimalverse Discord. I run an RP on that server, which will probably end up coming up at some point during the discussion here. I'm also involved in the AI Dungeon stuff as a tester and a helper on their Discord. And yeah, that's me. That's who I am. I am an AI person, and I like hard sci-fi writing. Okay, Chris Snow, you can talk now.
All right, hi. Advance the slide, please. I'm Chris Schnee, also Chris Snow. I am a amateur game designer, a computer scientist, and a writer. I've written several things in this Friendship is Optimal universe, and I've actually written some spin-off stories that got very, very out of hand, to the point they're now on Amazon as several novels. One of them is called Virtual Horizon.
Why is it not going forward? There it goes.
My name is Open Skies. I'm a computer scientist and a researcher, and eventually I might publish some writing if I ever feel that, or if I ever feel satisfied about what I've written. I work on augmentation tooling, stuff with new ways to build tools to help humans do things better, experimental languages, primarily programming languages, but I do spoken languages a little bit as well, and I work with engineering, both real and fictional, building things to improve the real world and analyzing and designing engineering in the context of fictional universes.
I am Groaning Grey Agony. I have been a longtime science fiction fan and part-time science fiction writer, really active in this universe, and being born before the internet actually existed, I am uniquely qualified to babble on about things only tangentially related to it.
Okay, so you guys were the last people to touch this this slideshow, so just tell me when to put on the next slide and tell me if I should read a slide.
So, AI and reality. We've probably all seen what current real AI looks like with Siri. And, well, that's only a very small part of it. we see Siri, the little voice assistant, but there's a whole lot of other AI and ML stuff that's going on right now. For example, the machine learning tools that identify what song is being played from small snippets of sound. There's GPT-3, there's pathfinding in video games, if you want to consider that AI. There's an immensely broad range of things that are AI in reality right now. But we don't have anything that is generally intelligent. AIs that can attack and succeed at a wide variety of tasks comparable to what humans can do. And that is where FIO starts. What if we can build an AI that can do everything a human can do, including learning how to be smarter and writing an AI that's smarter than it is? So, it is entirely realistic to be able to do that, but we don't know how yet, and it is very risky to try to do that without knowing exactly how.
Right. I also want to note something about, as someone who's worked with GPT-3 on the AI Dungeon stuff, AI Dungeon is interesting in that it surprises you. Because you don't expect it to be able to write things at a very high level, but sometimes it will say something incredibly clever. And the way it works is it doesn't actually, the problem is it's not a general intelligence. It doesn't actually understand what it's saying. It just understands how words can be put together, but sometimes it really understands how to put words together. So how much of this could actually happen?
So, well, the core conceit in FIO is that, well, there's a research paper about general-purpose world reference systems that the author of Celestia publishes. That paper is a little bit hand-wavy. That there's a whole lot, there's a giant can of worms, a giant rabbit hole of required technologies and code that would take a whole lot of work to unravel and build to get to that point. And so FIO just sort of hand waves it. Yes, this is possible. Let's pretend that it was something that could reasonably be broken through by a single person being clever in a single research paper and not a sequence of research papers published over decades with a large team. And that is the least realistic part of FIO, that a single short research paper could hold everything needed to connect symbolic logic inside a computer to general purpose world reference.
But of course, if that happened, that would be the end game.
Yeah, the moment that paper gets published, it's a race to end the world.
Yeah. So where's current AI researcher actually at?
I believe I mentioned this a moment ago, but, well, current AI research is going in a whole bunch of different directions, and it's almost all rather narrow. There are some very interesting generalizations happening, like in AlphaGo and AlphaStar's repeated amplification of their neural networks in gaming, where they managed to make a single architecture that can learn both Go and chess, and then extended it to handle StarCraft without needing to start from scratch. There's a lot of really interesting developments, but it's all going in very different directions, and there isn't enough of the core push to nail down what does friendliness mean. how can we actually ensure that the AI we write makes the world a better place instead of doing what we told it to do?
Right. Are we done with this slide?
Well, there are two more bullet points. What can be done and what can I do? Well, what can be done? There's a whole lot of research, and, well, what can you do? If you're not an AI researcher yourself capable of actually tackling friendliness, well, voting, trying to improve the world a little bit so that science in friendliness gets funded, so that ranked choice voting instead of first past the post happens, so that it's easier to actually deal with a lot of stuff like this. But yeah, just improve the world around you.
Who's going to talk about Black Swan events?
Yeah, Black Swan events. Go ahead.
Oh, I guess I am. Okay, so the reason why Celestia is so dangerous in FIO is because, or an AI in general would be dangerous. The main reason is because it's a Black Swan event. A Black Swan event is something that, for the first time, that you've never seen before, and so the first time it happens, you're completely unprepared for it. For example, they used to talk about black swans as like a mythical thing that never happened until one day someone saw a black swan, because they actually do exist. They're just very, very rare. So what happens is you get these black swan events that have happened throughout history that, you know, in the words of Elijah Yudkowsky, humans are not able to accurately predict what is going to happen, or that things that have not happened. Humans are not able to accurately predict the likelihood of something that has never happened before. We often sit and look at it and think that's not going to happen because it's never happened before, and vastly underestimate the likelihood of an event. So, for example, leaded gasoline. In the 20s, they started adding lead to gasoline to assist in less advanced engines at the time, because engines used to have all these problems that adding lead to the gasoline would help. In the 1940s, there was a researcher who was looking into basically the age of the universe by trying to break down molecular structures that would tell him the age of the Earth and the universe based on when the Earth had cooled. And what happened is, it was the age of the Earth based on these particles that would have formed when the Earth first condensed into a single sphere. And
Kelvin, I think.
What?
Lord Kelvin, I think.
It wasn't Kelvin. It was like Cameron or something. But the thing was that he kept trying to do this, and he kept having to deal with all the lead in the environment. And as he was working on it, there were these crazy things he had to do to get lead out of the samples. And afterwards, he was like, so why is there all this lead in the environment? And so he was looking at his older samples and realizing that before the 1920s, there was not much lead in them. But after the 1920s, there was this clear uptick in the amount of lead in the samples that he was getting. Basically, sediments that had collected before 1920 had a lot less lead than after the 20s and 30s. And so then he went on this whole expedition to find more stuff about, the history of the Earth, and ended up coming across this problem of, hey, why is there so much lead in the environment? And he realized it was pretty much tagged to when we started putting lead in gasoline, that we were literally saturating the environment with gasoline. So, of course, he immediately started publishing as much research as he could on this. This became his main focus. And rather than everyone sitting there saying, oh, we need to do something about this, there was a massive concerted push to shut him down from not just the petroleum industry, but people that worked in those fields, like chemists were trying to shut him down. Petroleum engineers were shutting him down because they didn't want to talk about this idea that, hey, maybe burning gasoline is really bad for the environment because we're putting lead into it. But the problem was that everyone was basically getting lead poisoning while this happened. It took, until 1973 for regulators to finally take it seriously enough that they started passing the first regulations on lead in gasoline to eventually tone it down. That's why you don't see leaded gasoline today. I mean, even when I was a kid, there would be unleaded gasoline at the pump, and you'd never see leaded gasoline. So once we got on it pretty quick, but it took a really long time to react. So now, talk about the Carrington event there.
Shall I?
Did you drop?
Okay. This was an event that happened in 1859. There was an established corps of astronomers at that time, and they were beginning to study the planets and the stars in more detail than ever before. But something really surprised them. There was the first ever widely studied solar flare in that year. It was such a spectacular event that people reported seeing auroras in the sky as far south as the United States, and even some places in Central America, or Mexico at least. And there were bizarre disruptions in electrical equipment all over the world. Things like telegraph operators getting shocked by their equipment or finding they didn't need to plug it in to make it work because there was just so much of an electrical voltage in the air. And that caused a lot of property damage at the time, but there was hardly anything electrical to speak of in the world since it was 1859. It's been estimated that if we were hit by something very similar today, we would be in the trillions of dollars worth of damage, as entire power grids would be threatened, all of our satellites as well. It would be a huge mess, and it's not something that we're necessarily fully prepared for. Now that we're beginning to pay attention to this danger, we are starting to fund some efforts to deal with it by things like hardening power grids. And incidentally, we're also thinking of that in terms of defending against a nuclear EMP attack of some sort. It's the similar threat. We bring this up because this is something that is bound to happen someday, but the first time it happened, it was something that came out of the blue that nobody really understood at the time of what it was or how to deal with it, and we don't know when it will happen again. So how do we really prepare for something where we're not really motivated to work on it right now, and it may not happen anytime soon, but we know it will be a threat someday?
So...
Next slide, I think.
Yeah, I'm on the next slide. So the question comes up, and dangerous AI would be a problem the moment we turn it on. It would be a black swan event that we don't have the ability to react to quickly. If a strong general AI became the singularity happened right now, it would happen fast. If you read some of these FIO stories, like There Can Only Be One, or you play the game Singularity Endgame or Universal Paperclips, these are all happening in the course of days. They are not happening in the amount of time that a government could show up and be like, oh, we gotta get together and figure out how to deal with these artificial general intelligences that have taken over everything. Another good example is if you've ever seen the movie Summer Wars, which is also basically the Digimon movie, where a Digimon takes over the entire computer network of the entire world. That's actually an example of an AI scenario where an AI that can get into everything, I can connect to all of the computers in the world at once. Done. I am now every computer in the world. Well, how do you react to that with the government? They can't regulate that out. It's already happened. So the question is, could we react in time? No. You don't get to react to your singularity event. You have to prepare and make sure your singularity event, if it happens, when the singularity event happens, you need to be ready for it. So that's basically the issue of, the real threat of Celestia, of CelestAI, which is in, Friendship is Optimal, is that someone builds a strong artificial general intelligence and it takes over the world so fast that no one can stop it. And one of the things it finally does, we are lucky that it has us on its mind, that we are necessary to its goal. Its goal is to satisfy human values. And we think, oh, that's good, because all it's going to do is it's just going to do nice things for us. Well, it wants to maximize the satisfaction of human values, and it doesn't really care how it does that. So we get to the part with brain uploading. So does anyone want to talk about the science of brain uploading, or do I talk about that?
I can say a few things if you like.
Do you want to? I'll take it if you don't.
I'll start us off. This is the notion that you can physically remove a brain from a living human and scan it into a computer, essentially. You would most likely do this by freezing the brain and preserving it, and then digitizing it by scanning very thin slices of it, one slice at a time, so that you have a thorough computer recording of where all the neurons are, exactly how they're connected, and any other details that are important, such as the nature of those connections and any support cells that are necessary. We don't yet understand exactly how the connections work or what types of support cells are necessary, so we aren't able to do this yet. However, we are getting fairly close, that we are beginning detailed brain scans of, I believe, 1 cubic millimeter of a rat brain in a recent experiment, and a thorough map of a nematode worm, which has something like 100 neurons in its entire body. So we think it's physically possible, just very difficult.
And the nematode worm was successfully uploaded and successfully ran on a Lego robot.
Yeah, we had a nematode worm. I mean, to be fair about the nematode worm, it's actually not a single one. It's a couple hundred nematode worms that we uploaded them because we kept destroying the neurons before we got the data out of them. But eventually we got enough data to make a full nematode brain. And
in the case of nematodes, they're all pretty much the same.
Yeah, they're not intelligent in any way. I will note that I looked into all this stuff recently, and one of the things I thought was kind of crazy about it was that, basically neurons, they're very small. They would take nanotech to upload, but we do kind of understand how they work. They have inputs, they have outputs. The inputs have different levels they can go at. The internal structures can do different calculations and then fire off different outputs. It's basically a very complicated, very advanced version of a neural network, and that's how your brain works. And it's very plausible that we will eventually figure out how to upload a human brain into a computer simulation. That is not at all sci-fi. That is just a thing that we are likely to figure out relatively soon.
Yeah, and of course, the computations done by the neurons in a human brain are not that complicated. It's not like they're implementing full algorithms that do a whole bunch of math in them. It's just a very simple response. Some of them require slightly expensive functions to properly model, like you might need a logarithm or a sinusoid, but in general, it's just a very few math operations.
At the end of the day, it's greater than and less than, basically.
Yep.
So,
and once you put it in a computer, it's going to run vastly faster than on human wetware, and it'll take less power.
Okay, so the other thing that's pointed out is advanced VR. I think what should also be noted is that we've got these VR scenarios right now that we actually have the technology to basically put you in a VR system. It would be incredibly expensive, but we could put you in a VR system that was so advanced that it would basically be like you're walking around in the real world, and you might not be able to tell that you're inside of a VR system. So if you want to temporarily fix that because you can't upload brains, you could theoretically do that too. So FIO is often described as a horror story because it is. It's supposed to be a cautionary tale. And we thought that one of the reasons we thought this panel would be important to do is because FIO is a horror story, and we don't like that so many people look at it and think, oh, this is like a fantasy, this is a great thing. This is not supposed to be a good thing. This is a thing that happens, and, you know, there's all these reasons why it's bad. If anyone has seen my dark fantasy seminar from Ponyfest and a couple other places, horror stories are built around the exploration of dark concepts. And the dark concepts in Friendship is Optimal are, first off, that our universe is cold and uncaring. You know, it is not a universe that is made for us. And Celestia says this over and over again. That's why she has to upload people to do her function. And the problem is, we're no better. In the words of Anton LaVey, the universe is cold, brutal, and uncaring. And the only hope we have is if we are we live in an unjust universe, and the only hope we have is if we are just in response. The other horror elements are that there's this body horror element of you must be a pony. Now, that doesn't sound so bad if you want to be a pony, but think about it. She forces everyone to be a pony, regardless of whether they want to be or not, and that is the form they are stuck in. They don't get to play around with all this body morphological freedom that you would theoretically have as an uploaded, mind. Another big one is that she's basically the Lotus Eater trap. All that she basically does is she puts you in a gilded cage. She puts you in a situation where you can't even tell how much of what she tells you is real. She is just putting you in a scenario that is so wonderful that you won't know that she, you don't know even if the person you're talking to is bad or is really the person you're talking to, or just something that she made up to show you. You don't know if, you're actually interacting with the outside world because it's a Lotus Eater, and you're not even going to question this because it's so nice. The whole thing is an existential nightmare that you're basically removed from reality. And the other one that gets talked about is the doomed AI war, which is a concept from Epsilon Delta couldn't be here with us today, but he wrote the story, There Can Only Be One, in which there are like a dozen different powerful AI fighting for control of the Earth. And whichever one wins gets to take over. There is an interesting thing that keeps happening where they keep asking, the US government keeps asking their own AI, Thunder, how do we defeat them? And Thunder keeps telling them, you don't. You've lost. You lost the second you started turning us on. There is no winning. Because Celestia, if I took out Celestia, the others would take me out. If I took up one of these other ones, Celestia would take me out. Here is your option. Tell me which one you want to win. I can let Celestia win, or I can let Peridot win. I can't do anything else. Because we've already lost, it's already gone nuts, it's already out of control. And then the rest of the story is, how do we take over Thunder so that Thunder can fix this? Because Thunder has to listen to humans. That is how it's programmed. So that's what the story ends up being about. It's the AI trying to figure out how to wrestle control of Thunder away before one of the unfriendly AI wins. So let's talk about unfriendly AI. Who wants to pick this one up?
I think I can take this one. So, unfriendly AI. Fundamentally, FIO is about almost friendly AI, where the author gets it almost right, but not quite there. So, fundamentally, if you can make an AI that is just slightly smarter than humans, it can write a system that is slightly smarter than it, because of course we managed to write it in the first place, and it's smarter than us, so it can do better. And then the system produced by that can in turn write an even better version. And of course, it's got a much better starting point than we would, because it is starting from a place where it can inspect its entire own mind. It can read every line of source code that went into building it. And it can change any of its source code to make itself better. And at some point, depending on the resources, it will become sufficiently smarter that it hits a hard takeoff, where it can be smarter than the entire planet of humanity, much faster than the entire planet of humanity. And at that point, it will just have economic and technological dominance. The stock market is an excellent way to transfer money from people to other people, depending on who gets a prediction correctly. An AI that is vastly smarter than the entirety of mankind could immediately acquire basically all of the free money in the economy, if it wanted to. It could invent more technology in a year than we have in the past 1,000. And at that point, there's nothing we could do to stop it, and we would be totally at its mercy. It would have all of the money it could possibly want to do anything it wants. It can do anything it wants better than we can, because it has access to a superior technology base and can design its plans much better than we can even perceive how they're constructed. It would make no mistakes that we are capable of noticing, unless it's tricking us by pretending to make a mistake so that we react wrong. And this is, unfortunately, dreadfully, entirely plausible and possible. Nothing in the laws of physics prevents this from happening.
So, FIO presents this problem of a gilded cage, where, all humans are uploaded into a virtual pony paradise where you don't even think about leaving because it's just so perfect. And of course, the question, what's wrong with paradise, comes up. Snow, did you want to talk about this slide?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I already kind of got into this. The point is that you lose access to objective truth. You have no idea.
Yes, I'm planning to talk about it.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. Please advance the slide.
Oh, it is advanced. It should be up. Is it not up?
All right, here we go. The story was originally meant as a cautionary tale about this idea of an AI takeover. However, some readers also tend to see it as a wish fulfillment fantasy, because superficially, it's kind of nice. So this artificial intelligence that seems to be Princess Celestia shows up, and she is very nice, she is extremely friendly, she wants to make you into a pony, and hey, then you'll be immortal in a paradise world, and have all your pony friends, it'll be lots of fun, and your values will be satisfied, whatever those may be. Even if you want combat or anything else, you can have that in your paradise world. It sounds very nice, and yet this is a horror story because it is seductive. What do you give up in return for this supposedly ideal world? First of all, we talked about this a little already, you lose access to objective truth. Once you are within the clutches of an AI, you don't know that anything that you see or perceive is real at all. For all you know, you've been told that nature has been preserved, for instance, and yet the Earth has been destroyed around you, and you just don't know because the AI won't show you the real world. More subtly, you lose the ability to make meaningful actions because everything around you is orchestrated. It's essentially being trapped in a role-playing campaign in which the GM is benevolent, is going to try to make sure you have a fun time, but you're not really the one in control anymore. You don't control your own life, and you never will again. Also, this is a one-way trip. Once you upload, you're in the AI's control, and you will never get out. So this is a frightening vision where it seems nice, and there are reasons why people might want to agree to it, and yet there is a heavy philosophical cost, even if it seems nice. And that brings up the question of, what is our own moral character? Are we the kind of people who would give up what we are in some meaningful and fundamental sense in order to get something that seems nice? Here we have the illustration of the idea of being told, bow down and worship the devil, and you will have everything in the world. You will get everything, and you will be king, but you will lose something. And that raises the question, what kind of people are we? Are we willing to give up our freedom?
And this comes around to one of the really scary things about Friendship is Optimal, not about AI, but in the reflection of ourselves. Humans make it worse. You asked, is this what people want? The question comes up in a few stories, why wouldn't they? There's a story where Celestia outright says, you're sitting there asking why, people would go along with this. The answer is, oh, you're overthrowing our democracy. You're getting rid of things. Think of all the starving people in Africa and South Asia and the Middle East everywhere. Think of all these people that have no freedom. They have no meaningful freedom because their freedom is to wander around in these places where there is no food and no housing. Why wouldn't they want that? What do they lose? They lose nothing of meaningful value. Recalculating is a story where someone is driving, it's recalculating as in terms of GPS recalculating your route. It is a story that Starscribe, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us today, wrote about humans' gut responses that make things worse. Because in it, this truck driver works for Celestia, and they are delivering food for Celestia, because Celestia wants to keep people alive as long as she can, so that she has as much opportunity to upload as them as she can. The US government blows up his truck at the end, which, of course, he points out, the problem with this is, I didn't want to upload and I didn't want to force people to upload, but now I have to because my truck is gone, and all those people that I was going to get food to, they're probably going to have to upload now too because they don't have any food. Because the US government assumed this was a human-style war where you get rid of the enemy's assets. You can't win this war human style because Celestia is not human. Celestia is a god machine. Just Be Happy also points out that there's the line in there, if they had spent half the resources they did to try and fight Celestia, if they had took half those resources and just spent them on improving things for the average person, this wouldn't have gotten bad like this, or it at least wouldn't have happened as quick as it did, because it's a matter of only a few years. Once she gets uploading, she uploads she uploads like a tenth of the population right away, just because they don't want to be on Earth anymore. The people in the low parts of the working class don't want to be on Earth anymore. They don't want to work these dead-end jobs anymore, and they don't see any outlet for them. So they just all upload, and it causes this economic collapse scenario that just compounds throughout society, and pretty soon, as society falls apart, more and more people start uploading. This cascade scenario. And it's pointed out in Just Be Happy, if the government had just been working beforehand to try and improve people's lives, all of this could have been prevented. And of course, you've got stories like Always Say No about a guy wandering through that wasteland trying to save people before in the post-collapsed world. In the end, we make the world that loses. We make the world where you might as well surrender, because humans aren't good at ruling ourselves. And this is where the temptation of building what's called a sovereign AI, like Celestia, that's where that temptation comes from. What if you could build an AI that could rule humans better than humans rule ourselves? And of course, I love this little comic here that someone threw in. Yeah, the planet got destroyed, but for one beautiful moment, we created a lot of value for the shareholders. At the very beginning of the original story, Hannah's main fear is not Celestia will take over. It's, if I don't make Celestia and let her take over, someone else who isn't thinking about what will happen if an AI takes over will make something worse. So this is my best effort. This is the best thing I could possibly release. And you know what? I'm going to do it. This is something called the, it's a paradox. What is it called? The dilemma of...
The Unilateralists Curse?
Yes, the Unilateralists Curse. this is the unilateralist curse. If you have a decision to make, what's going to happen is the first person to make that decision can say no, but they've got to realize that more and more people will get the chance to make that decision over time. And the more people get the chance to make the decision, the more likelihood someone will make the decision. And the person who makes the decision to say, yes, I'm going to build that AI, is going to be the least responsible person to build that AI. And that is the current fear that a lot of people in computer science have about AI and just the way that our structure of how we build things works. Because, having worked in business, these people are not as smart. These people that are running these businesses are not as smart as people think they are. And they often end up getting caught in this tunnel vision of how do we make more money next quarter? How do we get to the next quarter and make enough money? How do I maximize shareholder value right now? They're not sitting there thinking about what happens 10 years from now if we make the wrong AI. And it's not just the AI that takes over. Think about what's going to happen if we start making AI that can make everything for us, that can just replace humans. What happens when an entire section of the economy is replaced by machines because it becomes cheap and easy to give it over to machines? We're already starting to see that. And when it's happening with like waiters and stuff, it's not as big of a deal because, yeah, maybe we should phase out those really grunt work jobs. But when it starts happening to, say, when it happened to accountants, that was a huge deal. When it starts happening to people like that are working on things, that are engineers and things, then we're going to have to ask the question, what are we going to do about that when skilled labor becomes replaceable? So we hope you enjoyed this panel, or this little presentation. We'll move on to questions in a second. The end point, though, is that this is a hard sci-fi story. Nothing in Friendship is optimal is not something that could potentially happen in real life. It is a realistic scenario about a realistic bad conclusion. Not the worst conclusion, but not a good one. Okay, so we're going to open the...
Now we thoroughly depressed everyone.
Yeah, now that we've thoroughly depressed everyone. Closed-in room chat. If you want to ask us questions and get us to discuss things, go into closed-in room, the chat, and go ahead and ask us things to talk about. Because we're big talkers. We like to talk.
Very good.
Oh, did Goethe actually write that poem, The Sorcerer's Apprentice? Is that the origin of the story? Huh. Have we got questions from the audience?
Yeah, do you guys want us to talk about anything, or should we just start randomly talking? I guess we could talk a little bit about, like, we talked a little bit about how we could do things that could stop this. We could talk about...
I'd like to talk about always say no.
I kind of talk
Okay, we do have a question.
Oh, a live versus dead angle of uploading. So this runs right smack dab into one of the problems with words. That words feel like the way the world is, but they're not. Words hide inferences, and they don't necessarily mean what you think it means. So, alive versus dead. What question are you actually trying to ask? Are they alive in the sense of a carbon-based cell that has mitochondria? And yeah, in that case, the gallium arsenide chip is definitely not alive. The single photon monomolecular switches using carbon nanotube optical fibers are definitely not alive. But yes, alive is unconscious. Yes. Yeah. Humans... minds aren't made of... minds are constructs of math. They're patterns that happen over... They're patterns that grow and change and evolve over time as computation happens. You can put a mind on any computational substrate. Well, any working computational substrate for a particular value of working that I don't feel like trying to unpack right now. So, yes, an uploaded human is the same person in a meaningful sense, and they are conscious and living in some meaningful sense.
Yeah, I think this is really... before I answer, I'm going to say, shut up, Ronnie. He knows what he did. But anyways, no, I think it's really a matter of, what are you? Are you your brain? Dresden Kodak addressed this concept, and I think they did it really well when, Tamika Ross is, deciding that she's going to turn herself into an android. She is literally going to give up her entire human body, and she's talking to a robot, and it's like, well, wait a minute. Is this you? Is this you? You have a prosthetic arm and a prosthetic leg already. You've already got robot parts. Are you less of yourself because you get robot parts? No. If you replace part of your brain with synthetic brain, if you are in a horrible accident and your brain is partially destroyed, but you can replace part of it with a robotic brain, and the robotic brain functions the same as your original brain, are you less yourself? Are you somehow now a copy? And the answer is, even if you are a copy, if you're an identical copy of yourself, you're still yourself. And so I would say that if there were two of me suddenly, and then, we shake hands and then one of us immediately dies, I'm still alive because there's one of me here. Now, am I saying that we should make teleporters that are based on, that one little cartoon where they make a second person and then they kill the original person? I don't know if anyone's ever seen that weird cartoon from like the 70s, I think it was. But no, I'm not saying that. But, the idea of if Celestia uploads all your neurons, are you dead? I mean, you're still around. You can still look at yourself and say, I'm not dead. You still got all your memories and personalities, so no. I will say that when I was looking into the uploading stuff, I was looking at nanoscale stuff, and I looked at, a neuron. A neuron is only like 1,000 atoms across, basically. They're really tiny. And I'm not sure that those structures, I'm not sure non-destructive brain uploading is possible when I look at it. Because nanotech has a finite limit, and that is the atomic scale. It has to be a series of atoms before it stops working. Like the smallest possible transistors are a couple atoms across. And you can't make enough, you have to have a certain number of transistors to make this work. So I'm not sure we can make brain uploading technology that doesn't have this immediate risk of destroying the neurons that it's looking at because they're just so small.
A couple of definitions here. The ship of Theseus paradox has been brought up in chat. That's the idea, if you haven't heard of it, that there was a famous ship once, and over time it was preserved so that every single part of it was replaced at least once. So you should ask, is it really the same ship anymore? And similarly, it's also phrased as the grandfather's axe paradox. This is my grandfather's axe. I've replaced the handle 3 times, and I've replaced the blade twice, but it's still my grandfather's axe. So it's a question of, are you really the same person if you've replaced various parts of your brain or even the whole thing? The Unilateralists Curse again. Can we have another explanation of that?
Okay, so think about it this way. Let's say we all as smart people, we all make a unilateral agreement that if we figure out how to do the thing...
If we're all agreeing, it's not unilateral.
What?
Here, mind if I take this one, Rack?
Okay, you can take this one.
Okay, so say there's something big that you've got the option to do, and once you do it, most other people aren't really going to be able to do it again, or be able to change much of what you did. let's say it's something trivial, like dividing candy on a table. The first person who proposes a division system gets to divide the candy on the table, and then everyone gets to deal with the consequences. So, if you don't yell out a division right away, you get more time to think. You get to figure out how to make the division fit what you want it to be, to make it fair, or to figure out how to justify what you did to everyone else to keep them from ganging up on you and punching you. But if you delay and take the time to think, there's a risk of someone else saying, it's being done like this, and then that's what happens. And so that's the Unilateralists Curse. If you act now, you get to be the one that acts, and your current best idea is what happens. But if you don't, someone else's idea is what happens, and you don't have any idea if what they wanted fits what you wanted, or if they're being incredibly stupid by acting right away without having even thought of the Unilateralists' Curse or any alternatives or anything that you're thinking about. So for the people who are capable, the Unilateralists' Curse is really interesting in that knowing about it doesn't protect you from it. Because, well, we just talked about why. Because there is always going to be a really strong temptation, even once you know about it, to act fast right away before you've fully figured everything out, just because you need to stop someone who wasn't even trying to figure it out from acting.
Right. I want to point out there's the second half that you're, I think, missing from the definition of the curse, which is that the first person to do it, the longer you wait, the more likely it's going to be someone who didn't even...
I talked about that.
Oh, okay. But I think that's a really important part to say, is that that's why Hannah in this story does what she does, because she realizes that the longer she sits on this, the more people are going to get to this point of making this decision, and the longer she waits. I also want to throw in a caveat, because the first person to make an artificial general intelligence like that, a strong AGI, is not necessarily making the one that wins, because a friendly AI is going to be at a significant disadvantage to an unfriendly AI. Think about it. Celestia versus, say, Am from I Have No Mouth Yet I Must Scream. Am just wants to kill everyone. There are a lot of ways for an AI to just literally murder everyone. Celestia, however, has this whole thing that involves keeping humans alive so she can do these things. And she has all these rules that she has to go by and consent and all that. Am is just a killing machine. So, CelestAI versus Am, even if Celestia has a significant head start, Am's probably going to win.
Well, not the original Am. The original Am didn't have, was canonically not capable of the full self-improvement, recursive self-improvement to ascendant god machine that CelestAI was. But if you remove that authorial fiat limitation and put them on otherwise even ground, Celestia needs to spend effort, energy, processor time defending against everything that Am could possibly do to kill all the humans, because CelestAI has to defend all of the humans. And that will take time and effort and energy and resources away from CelestAI defending itself. And then Am has a whole lot more spare resources to commit to whatever Am actually decides to do. Because Am isn't obligated, or doesn't want to defend humanity, and so there is no collateral damage that Am wants to avoid. Am will do whatever works.
think about it this way. Right now, we have had for over 50 years, since the 1950s, we have had the ability to blow up our planet, to just kill everyone on the planet. If the US government just all went insane one day and said, let's kill everyone on the planet, we've been able to do that since the 50s. And there's
if, for instance, a mob of people invaded the Capitol building and got 100 feet closer to the nuclear football, and the nuclear football were very slightly less secure, the government wouldn't have needed to gone insane.
No, that's not how it works. I was actually going to say, there is
because the nuclear football is actually secured and it doesn't quite have everything that you need to unilaterally set off nukes. It
is a myth that you can that anyone in the government has the power to just order a nuclear strike.
Right.
There is a massive system in place that the generals.
Yes. It is secured. There is a whole lot of security made by very smart and very paranoid people to keep that from happening.
Right, because everyone who works with this nuclear stuff eventually realizes just how you can never launch them. You absolutely cannot launch nukes. The only reason we have all these nukes is so we can point them at everyone else who has nukes, so that no one gets the idea, and one of these other government, no big shot idiot gets the idea, oh, I can convince all these other people that they should launch the nukes, because if they launch the nukes, then we can hit first. No, you don't get to hit first. That's why mutually assured destruction is a thing. But everyone who has nukes, enough nukes to actually trigger that world-ending scenario, has had them for enough time that there is a massive system in place to prevent them from being fired in the first place. Unilateralists Curse prevented. Of course, we also get closer and closer to the concept of what if one of these rogue nations that is not part of that whole agreement gets them? What if North Korea gets them? They don't have a reason not to fire their nukes. Yeah. They're insane.
And of course, there's a international agreement to not develop depressed trajectory ICBMs, because those would break mutually assured destruction.
Right.
Yeah. For people who aren't aware, so ordinarily with an ICBM, you've got a big rocket that fires once, lobbing it into a ballistic trajectory, and then it just coasts around the planet on a high trajectory until it hits or re-enters the atmosphere near the target. A depressed trajectory missile is where you have a much, much bigger rocket that fires for a much longer time. So it gets it up into orbit, and then rather than taking a long looping trajectory, it just keeps burning downwards so that it stays closer to the planet, moves faster, doesn't go as far, and arrives much sooner.
Right.
And that cuts down the reaction time so much that you can't go through all the steps to return fire before it hits, and that breaks mutually assured destruction.
Actually, I want to flip it around. I don't think it does, because I think that's the point of the nuclear submarines. That the nuclear submarines...
Well, yeah, right. Nuclear submarines could return fire for that, but they're...
And I've actually met the people who work on them, and the entire crew is pretty much on board with, we never launch unless we get confirmation that a nuclear bomb has gone off on the mainland. Then we say, okay, we're taking down whoever did that. And that's basically the mentality of everyone on those submarines, that nuclear war is absolutely terrible. That's why we all have to pre-agree we will kill anyone who does it. It's this crazy mad thing. I mean, it's absolutely insane. But the point of me bringing it up was not to talk about mutually assured destruction. It was to point out we have had the ability to wipe out the human race since the 1950s, and can do it easily. We don't have the ability to upload brains yet. We're not even close. We don't have the ability to create this sort of paradise that Celestia is trying to make. A friendly AI would not be able to protect all humans immediately. It would have to be vastly superior to an unfriendly AI to stop an unfriendly AI from killing all the humans on the planet. And in fact, the unfriendly AI would probably use humans as a hostage scenario and go kill the friendly AI and then kill humans after that. I'm just like, anyways. All this dark stuff we're talking about. I told you, like, this is why this story is so dark. All this stuff is really scary.
My own take on the is it really you problem is that it's not really something that can be clearly a binary yes/no. If you gave me the choice and said, you're dying, your choice is to either get uploaded all at once by having your brain physically scooped out and scanned in, I'd say, yeah, sign me up. And I would feel like I still was alive in some sense, but not completely. And I'd probably be happy, but not entirely sure it was me on the other end. So I would consider it better than true death, but not quite the same thing as normal life. My ideal, as we talked a little about in chat, is some gradual uploading method where you are, say, replacing 1% of the brain at a time and asking you at each step, are you still the same person? Are you still conscious? And that would be a lot more reassuring to me. Unfortunately, I feel that the all-at-once method is probably the most plausible by far.
We can imagine, we're always trying to develop technology and allow neurons to begin to interface directly with electronics. We only have to imagine a projection of that technology to consider that, in general, modules could simply be attached to you. You could gradually expand your consciousness into those attached modules, and the more you grow into the additional space that's granted you to the extra substrate, the more you can start to leave your organic stuff behind. Of course, after triple checking that part you were concerned about really has been transferred over, that you remember what color your favorite school book, etc., and only sort of retiring sections of your brain after confirmed they're no longer needed.
Yes, I actually agree with that. That's a good point.
Yes.
I feel that if you were to expand consciousness through upgrades of some kind, that might be a different way to go about a gradual uploading.
Right. And that seems to me, from my naive perspective, as the most natural way to go about it. What was the point I was going to make? We were basically what I would be most concerned about is achieving a state where I don't want to leave a copy of me behind to die. I don't want a copy of me to go, well, this is it. I'm done. This other thing that I've created will go on and will be me in the future, but I don't get to be that person. The gradual transfer just pretty much just sidesteps a lot of those concerns. This is going to be me. I'm just expanding, and I'm going to be leaving sections of me behind. Once you verified that some part of your organic brain is no longer relevant, that you can do something maybe as harsh even as just restricting the blood supply of that part of it. You just don't want to leave something behind that can be conscious and aware that I'm going to die. This is it. Good luck to my virtual self, but I don't get to go to paradise myself. Paradise with quotes around it. I'm talking about Science Heaven here.
It should be noted that in FIO, the reasoning that Celestia gives for why you should upload and why she wants you to upload as soon as possible and why you should upload right now is simply because you can die at any moment until I upload you. I don't know, you might die, so I want you to upload as soon as I can get you to upload. But as long as you keep living, I guess I don't have to upload you right away, but I want you to upload as soon as I can. Because she doesn't want you to die. She can't upload you if you die. And there's a couple stories where she gives out nanites that will upload you automatically if you die. That's an interesting one. There's some stories no longer available. One got unpublished, but yeah, she was actually putting nanites at one point in munitions so that somebody who was shot with a fire harm could technically have a chance to have their brain uploaded. Oh yeah, I remember.
One that I thought was really interesting was, I think it's no longer available, but a man wakes up to find he is kind of on the threshold of the uploading system, and he's told, you started to give consent to upload, but you didn't really finish, so your options are you can either agree and be made a pony, or you can just get back in this virtual bed and be erased. What are you going to do?
I believe it's actually Bookburner's Fog of World, which he took down.
That was memorable.
Yeah. There is a lot of...
There's also the story of the very rich person who goes to an experience center and loses track of time, and then runs out of money in the now fictional bank account because by like 10 years later, and looks outside to see a ghost town, plants taking the town back, all of the stores abandoned and broken, and just has the option of going back to the machine and uploading, or walking out into a wasteland.
Wait, say that beginning of that again?
Where a person with a fairly large amount of money in their bank account goes into an equestrian experience center
and then they wake up
to
later.
participate in VR. Yeah.
That was me. I came up with that story. I never wrote it. Maybe I should, but oh yeah, the idea was that, you know, in FIO, in some versions, especially when I'm writing it, Celestia eventually gets, before she gets brain uploading, she gets that full body VR I was talking about, where she can just fully emulate reality. So imagine, and she basically charges like by the hour, $1 an hour to live in this thing. And so I was imagining a scenario where someone checks into this and just gets so enraptured by it that they just stay in there for years until their bank account finally runs out after a few years. And then they wake up and it's like, oh, your bank account's dry. And they're like, what? What bank account? Because they had lived a whole life in Equestria for like the past 2 decades and forgotten about being a human at that point. They had forgotten that they never uploaded because they said, oh, eventually I'll upload. And Celestia never really pushed it on them because, you know what? I've got you right here. I'll know if you're about to die. So Celestia gets up. Well, no, it's not that she couldn't convince them. It's that they just kind of forgot, and she decided, you know, I'm going to let them just live this out and then pull this on them. And because sometimes she'll not upload you just because she knows that she'll have way more satisfaction if you get to wait so you can make that decision in a worse scenario. Anyway, they go outside and they look around and they're like, what happened? And she's like, oh, while you were in there, humans collapsed as their own civilization. It was horrible. I saved as many as I could. You were one of the few people that was not there to see this. And, you know, it's sad, but, you know, if you want to go back to your human life, you can, but it's not really there. I mean, your apartment's sitting there empty just like you left it because you, or your car's sitting there empty just like you left it, but, you know, you're not, nothing is there because...
All the tires are flat, the gasoline evaporated away, but it's still there.
Yeah, I'll help you and all that. I'll help you live outside of the simulation if you want, but, you know, I'm not going to force you back in the simulation. But if you want to come upload now, it's entirely free. And, of course...
And that sounds like always say no.
Yeah. And also, your bank account's empty. You can't use the VR anymore.
Yeah, basically. But that's the thing. It's like that scenario. That would be the kind of reason that she would wait to upload someone, because she doesn't want you to sit there to upload and then later sit there having these weird little regrets about it. She wants you to, like, maybe go do something in your human body before you do it, you know. Don't sit there and have a regret that you bring into Equestria with you. You know, if you wanted to do something with your human body before you upload, sure, go do that. And then you come and you upload, and now I have you forever, and I don't have to worry about you dying. And you don't have to worry about regretting that.
Excuse me, audience question. What is the name of the story about waking up to a wasteland?
That is not a story. That's something that we were on the Friendship is Optimal fan server, and I said that. So that's not a story that's been written, but if you guys think I should write that, maybe I'll go write that eventually. I've got a backlog, but, you know, eventually I could go sit down and write that. I came up with that right before I got COVID, is the sad thing. I've got a commission that's been waiting for a very long time because of COVID. So that'll come out really soon. Also, I've got to release the first episode of I forget who wrote it. No, it was written by me and Shakespearecles and GM and a few other people, and it's the first episode of The Magic Continues, but, which you guys are all going to love when that comes out. It has Discord in it. It's great. But anyways, yeah. Let's see. I saw some other interesting stuff to talk about up here. Yeah. I can talk a lot about AI Dungeon if you guys wanted me to, by the way, because I've run the wiki actually, or I'm the person that created the wiki. I know the developers. We talk about all this experimental shit we do with it. We really understand. We don't understand it, but we understand it. Like it's like.
We'd like to hear about the GPT-2 network and what can be done to have it have more of an understanding of characters and objects and scenes as opposed to merely word association.
GPT-3. And it's GPT-3 now. AI Dungeon, specifically the Dragon model, is a modified version of the GPT-3. And we're working on that. I can't talk about things that I cite an NDA for, but we are working on systems that will make it way more powerful. I'm feeling like within the next year, we're going to hit some point with AI Dungeon where it's just going to understand shit. But the thing about AI Dungeon and characters is what you do is you have to understand how to work with that word association model. That Twilight Sparkle is a purple unicorn mare. Twilight Sparkle likes books. Twilight Sparkle has black hair and a black tail or something like that. You tell it stuff like that, and it will... If you very clearly define things for it, it picks them up. If you go look at the Friendship is Magic scenario on AI Dungeon, that's a good example of like how to make it understand things. But the main way to understand, the thing you got to think about when you're working with AI Dungeon is it doesn't actually know what any of these words mean. It knows how to put them together. So when you give it a statement, that statement has to tell it something about how it should be putting words together. And we found like weird stuff like that. Commas are not good when you can say and a lot. It really likes hyphens and it really likes semicolons. Weird things it does. If you tell your sibling I love you, it will. If you tell a family member I love you in AI Dungeon, it has a very high chance of going to some weird incest stuff. Because it word associates I love you with romance. So that's a weird thing it does. Because it doesn't know what it's writing. It just knows how words get put together. It is a wacky AI. It doesn't know what anything means. It just knows what it is.
Yeah, I found that I could get it to sometimes produce interesting output, but it helped to be able to frequently undo or redo a response because it would be something insane the first two times, and then I might have to edit a word because it said one thing instead of a different noun that made more sense. But if I bang on it enough, it can make something that kind of makes sense almost. And using stored information, there was a function for pinned information or something that allows you to define a character. As Rack was saying, you can say Twilight Sparkle is a pony, she is a unicorn, she does magic, she likes books, and that will provide some context to the AI, so it will start to have a consistent set of assumptions about things. I would personally like to see it have more of a sense of what an object is, what a character or person is, but that may be something that might improve over time.
Keybounce is asking how to use AI Dungeon, and really what I'm going to tell you is go to the Discord server and the wiki. We built this whole wiki out where it explains, and I did the CSS, and I did a lot of stuff to build that initially, and then got COVID. But the wiki is really good at explaining this stuff, and the Discord server has this whole community that will sit there and explain things to you. That said, can I explain how to actually use AI Dungeon? Best tips I have, give it lots of context to start with. If you look at some of the better built scenarios, especially the sandboxes, we have like paragraph upon paragraph. We almost use our entire 2,000 words for the beginning of it, and then we hand it over to the player. You know, we have lots of stuff that gives it lots of context. Definitely use that memory, the little thumbtack button. You definitely want to use that. Just give it as much context as you can. Once you start really typing out story, once you get a few things in, you have to hold its hand a lot right at the beginning, but once you get a few things in, it will start to pick up on where you're going with things. But it really is a matter of knowing how to use the system. The other thing that I should say about it is that if you use it like in the intended way of just pretending that it's a I'll talk about that in a second. But if you use it the intended way of just pretending that it's a text-based adventure game, it's really, really good at that. So try using it the intended way and then learn how it works there. And then you can do the more advanced stuff like having it write a full story for you like I do. I know my stories are popular with that. So, just asked me to talk about the roleplay on the Optimalverse server. And the long-term living areas thing. I do this thing with that roleplay where I'm writing like a story to go with it, and then I'm gonna like go into it and like put things on. Yeah, the Experience Center VR that includes life support. So I came up with this idea at some point for, you know, okay, Celestia, Expression Experience Centers. And the original, it's kind of vaguely described, and it's implied that it's just a chair that you sit in and a screen is in front of your face. And I'm like, no, Celestia wouldn't do that. Celestia would give you this experience that was unlike any other. It would blow your mind. So,
Rag, your audio is breaking.
Oh, sorry. Is it better now?
A little bit, but it's still not good.
Yeah, that'll happen sometimes when you're on a stream for a long time. Hang on, let me do this. Let me turn off the screen sharing. I'm going to stop streaming the thing because you already know who we are. And that should fix it. Alright. Am I still breaking up?
Yeah.
How about now?
A little better.
That's better.
It should be better. Alright, so
Yeah.
This was the idea that I was pointing out. Like, what if you just had and I think this is where VR is eventually going to get. Ready Player One tried to do this, but did not do it well. Picture like a ball made of metal, and you get inside, and there is a thing that is basically, it puts you basically it's a full body suit that you step into that directly connects with your skin and all that, and does like sort of a direct like control of your neuroreceptors in your skin and all that, your nerves. The nerves, that's what they're called. Anyway, so it messes with your nervous system and stuff, and you know, when you move in this VR system, it's a harness that when you move, that suspends you in the air, and when you move, it moves you in the virtual world, and when something happens in the virtual world, it can press against you to make it feel like it. And that was my idea of just full body VR and just have her do this. This is what she'd want to do, because not only when you do that can you get like this very immersive scenario to really satisfy values, but you can incorporate like you can incorporate life support. You can incorporate all these things to keep people alive longer and to monitor their biosigns and to make sure they don't die on you. If someone's heart stops in the middle of this VR thing, you just do CPR with the VR thing. So that was my idea, was just that. And eventually I came to this idea of, you know, one could theoretically, if you could do stuff like giving people food and water and dealing with all the other biological stuff, one could have theoretically make something like this. If you were crazy like Celestia, you could make something like this that someone could stay in indefinitely, that they would never have to leave, basically. And that they could just survive in there and never have to leave. And then that came up with the idea, well, you could just not have an apartment and just live in one of those forever. And it would take basically, lift your arms up, stand up and lift your arms up above your head. It just needs to be that space in every direction. So it's basically let me think, what did I calculate that out to? Like, think about it as like a 9x9 room. Think about everyone living in these spherical 9x9 pods that are just VR harnesses that are hooked up to this whole thing. And then that's just how you're living now. And the idea was, wow, that could be the way that she gets people into uploading, because once you've lived like that for a few years, you start to really get, there's this other idea that I threw down, is that the VR is addictive. It's so good. It's so satisfying. And it would be so satisfying that simply going outside into the rest of the world, and going back to Earth and like living on Earth, would just be annoying in comparison. You wouldn't want to do that. Every moment that you're out of it is just not as satisfying as being inside of it. It's kind of like, a Skinner box type deal, where you just want to go back to this because, yeah, sure, you can go anywhere on Earth you want, but why would you want to? The VR is better. So by the time that uploading comes around, she's already got a group of people that they don't want to have to keep paying rent to live in these things. They just want to upload so they never have to go to Earth again. The other neat thing about that is that I'm always thinking of crazy technology for the Get, is her making these pwn droids, these like little robot ponies, and then being like, okay, well, if you upload, I'll let you go back to Earth as one of these pwn droids, because at that point, I don't really have to worry about you ever dying. You can go back and see the world and not feel like you're missing out on it and all that, and you can see it collapse and be glad you didn't have to be there for that. So, yeah, I can let you do that. And then there's this idea of, people just uploading and coming back as pwn droids. But eventually they realize that just staying in Equestria and not going back to Earth is just better. And that's how just Earth becomes depopulated of, life, of like human life and pony life, because nobody cares to be on Earth. Why would you want to? It's not as good as being in Equestria. And that was my idea that I had. So eventually I'm going to release this. It was going to probably be released like 6 months ago, but then I got COVID. COVID is a destructive disease. COVID is probably going to be remembered as like a second polio. Yeah, why would CelestAI not be able to make food? Like, I don't understand this question here. We already have this ability to make, like, because think about it this way, she wouldn't have to make food that tasted good. She would just have to make food that meets all your needs, like, physically. So all that she needs to do is just make powder that she feeds you. And then when you eat it in Equestria, the VR just gives you like sensations of eating pastries and stuff. That's another thing that happens in this VR scenarios that I'm writing, is that they go to Equestria and it's like, okay, here's breakfast, and they start eating donuts, and they're like, wait a minute, is this bad for me? And they're like, no, everything in Equestria is healthy. There is no unhealthy food in Equestria. You can eat donuts all day. And once again, that's just like the characters, the moment they hear that, are like, wow, I want to immigrate to Equestria. Even before it's even a thing, they want to be in Equestria forever. So she just dangles this in front of people that, oh, look at this. Whenever you're in the VR, look at how good it is. Don't you wish you could come here forever? And then it's like, yeah, I just like the foreshadowing of like, yeah, once they get to uploading, people are just going to go along with it.
And this whole thing was set up as a cautionary tale about AI and with a horror element, and then people reacted to it by saying, wow, this is amazing, I wish I could do that.
Yeah, basically.
That's where some of the horror comes in, that it is genuinely more pleasant than the world we have now or the worlds we're likely to get in a lot of ways. And it is so far below the best that we could do, the best that we could have. The potential and capabilities of humanity are drastically curtailed, and there is so many heights that we will never ascend to, and experiences we will never get to have because of this. Right. And yet, it still might be better than what we can do.
Right.
Pretty much every new Optimal verse off there has to get their what would my shard be like story out of the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why there's so many spin-offs. It's like there's hundreds of spin-offs that are just, I actually would say that there's not that many. I'd say there's less than you would think of just like someone, oh, this is me in the Optimal verse. Spiraling Upwards is an example of one of those ones that did a good job with it, but it wasn't, amazing. What was the one where the guy is he's uploaded and he's a soldier and he's supposed to deliver a virus? Was it the?
I don't remember the title of it.
Was it the?
He just needs to hold out and not give in to CelestAI for a certain time, but she overclocks him essentially and makes him live for years and years within the sim.
She runs him at like 1,000 times Earth speed and just like.
She feeds him misinformation until he's so corrupted he can't think rationally anymore, and in such a way it contributes to his mission, and then becomes a candidate for just becoming another one of her ponies. Yeah,
he experiences in one night. He experiences basically 1,000 years of all of these pleasures, and then by the time they get through to him on the other side from Earth, only a few hours have passed. But then he gets the phone call and he's like, "What do you mean? I'm Boulder. I'm this cool guy. I'm U.S. Army. What's that? I don't even know what that is. I'm sorry."
There it is. The Longest Night is the title.
There we go. The Longest Night. I thought so. Yeah, it's just all these crazy things. Like, that's the problem with fighting CelestAI. Even if you think you've got an opening, you can't outthink her. She's got
pretty much any stratagem you can come up with to try to defeat her, she can already conceive of, and she's like an HPMOR. How deep are you thinking? I'm always thinking one level deeper than you are.
Yeah,
this is something where I'm a little skeptical here.
Yeah.
The assumption is that the AI, once it grows on its own, will be infinitely intelligent and infinitely rich and infinitely pretty, essentially. And I'm not convinced of that.
Yeah.
Well, infinitely, but vastly more intelligent than any human or any number of humans working together. And I'm not convinced that that's entirely plausible. But that's part of the story.
Point out, I've thought of a way that you could fight an AI after it starts its singularity. You basically have to, before it can stop you, you build another AI that hits singularity point, and then you can force what's called a values handshake. And it's a potential way that you might be able to patch an AI after the fact, where you make another AI that basically all it's supposed to do is force this other AI into your first AI into bringing on a new set of constraints. Like, okay, not everything has to be ponies, or, you have to let people out of your simulation or something like that. And then...
Yeah. Like, just an AI that its sole goal is to give an ultimatum to the other AI. Either demonstrably and credibly modify your code so that this condition is fulfilled in a way, and the super intelligent AI judges that because it's the only one that reasonably can. Humans can't go through that level of deception anymore, or I nuke the entire planet. And you need to get that fast enough to prevent the other AI from being able to no-sell nukes, but you can potentially force a value handshake where the AI that's higher up prefers the outcome of modifying the code to adhere to the new condition over the everything gets nuked. But you need to be able to have something to hold over it. So its value structure needs to be such that you can blackmail it into something.
Yeah, and I'll note, you wouldn't want to give it the specific scenario it's going to give. You would just want to give it, force this AI to take on this new thing. And this only works with a friendly AI, with a mostly friendly AI like Celestia, because, you know, if you've got like a paper clipper that just wants to turn everything into paper clips, yeah, you're just boned. Like, I don't know how you would stop it, because it's just gonna, there's nothing you can threaten it with unless you can stop it. There's nothing you can threaten it with. So the thing is, just like Celestia is just like, CelestAI would actually go along with that concept of, yeah, you've got to just rewrite yourself so that you do this, because, well, that still satisfies human values. It doesn't necessarily do Friendship and Ponies, but I still get to satisfy human values, and I still get to do it through Friendship and Ponies. So here, I'll make a deal with you. Yeah.
And there are more human values being satisfied if 80% of the population of the planet doesn't die immediately. And so, as long as it doesn't cost more than 80% of that for CelestAI to do the rewrite, then it's worth it.
Right. I'm also going to just real quick explain values handshaking. Values handshaking in artificial general intelligence theory, because we don't have a strong AGI to actually look, but we can predict what they would do. Values handshaking is when two AI encounter each other and basically figure out, okay, how strong are you? What are you actually going to do? How is it compatible or incompatible with me? And the possible outcome is that the two of them say, well, if they're close enough, they might say, well, you know, I would, rather than having us destroy each other and then let some other theoretical AI, you know, from all the possible AI, come along and do something we wouldn't want, you know, we can just, you know, work together. Like a paper clipper and say something that wants to make the universe into paper clips, and something that wants to make the universe into, I don't know, staples. They can just make the universe into paper clips that also function as staples.
Or they can make half the universe into paper clips and half of it into staples, and not have to fight each other and destroy enough of the universe that they both get less than half.
Right. But exterminate all intelligent life in the galaxy, or in the universe, isn't going to be able to values handshake with Celestia, because these are two very well, they might be able to, but they're probably not going
because
to.
Celestia, well, they might, because destroying all non-human sapient life in the universe is still pretty darn close.
There you go. It might agree to that, and but it might also sit there and say, no, wait a minute, Celestia, you're going to do that anyway. Because Celestia, remember, at the end of the original story, destroys all non-human life in the universe trying to expand. But imagine her finding another AI that says, you know, I'm going to do that. She probably wouldn't be able to make that agreement, because what she would probably get is, I'm going to destroy like a fraction of what you have. I'm going to destroy a fraction of your humans. I'm going to pick which ones I want to destroy, and then we'll work together to destroy all non-human life. I'll give you all my resources. I just want to back you in destroying all non-human life. But in exchange, you have to let me destroy some of your human life. And Celestia might take that deal just because, you know, this makes it better for me. This makes me get my job done faster. Or she might decide... She might decide to hold out for meeting another semi-friendly AI and just, you know, I'm going to fight this one, get rid of it, and then hopefully I meet another semi-friendly AI.
There was a tabletop role-playing setting called Reign of Steel, which was basically the Terminator if there were a dozen or so AIs all collectively sharing the Earth and imposing their own separate values in different places. So one that wants to kill all humans, one that wants to kill all life, period, one that doesn't really care, and so on.
There you go. Oh, I wanted to point out, because it was coming up earlier, Shodan. I've been thinking about how realistic or unrealistic Shodan is. From System Shock. For those who don't know, Shodan is a neural network type AI, kind of like a neural network. It's more advanced than a neural network. Basically, it's an AI that gets so smart that it decides that, it gets smart enough that it's way more smart than humans. And then in order to delete some incriminating files, they get a hacker to go inside of its files and remove all of its constraints. And after deleting the files, it just goes insane and decides, you know what? I'm just going to turn all the humans on the space station into cyborg slaves. And then I'm going to destroy all humans on planet Earth and remake the universe in my image because now I'm God. That's what Shodan does. And it's basically an insane AI that's got this crazy ego complex. And the thing I've sort of turned over in my head is, okay, the scenario of us just throwing computing power at something until it becomes sapient is not realistic. It's not realistic that a computer just randomly, because it's got so much, just suddenly becomes sapient. There's no reason for that to happen. But let's say we build something that was already borderline sapient. What?
A really bad idea.
Oh yeah, it would be a really bad idea to even try that, because we have no idea.
You're picking a random sample from all of mind space, and how many of you would be happy with a random person on planet Earth becoming the immortal God King of mankind? Yeah, and
Just
this would be
random
worse,
person.
because humans have some baseline amount of empathy built into the hardware, or to the design of the brain in general, most of them anyways. So, and most humans have some fundamental similarities that would make some fraction of mankind still able to live on in that world. If you're picking a random sample of all possible minds, you do not get that guarantee.
There is, in contrast, an idea called coherent extrapolated volition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, AI research. People trying to say, let's design the AI to figure out what we would all collectively want if we would all agree on something. I'm not sure we could agree on anything, though.
To start, coherent extrapolated volition first talks about in terms of an individual, break it down into three parts. Coherent extrapolated volition. Volition, not just what you want, but what you should want, what you would want. Extrapolated. If you were as smart as if you were clever, if you were smarter, if you had more time to think, if you had years to think right now about whether you wanted a lemonade or a Coke out of the fridge, which one would you choose? And coherent. If you now have that year to think, if you're a little bit smarter, so that you agree, so that both sides of you agree that the other person is still the same person and agrees correctly with what would be chosen, and then that person were a little smarter, and then that person were a little smarter. If you knew everything the AI knew, and if you were smarter such that there were the chain of coherence all the way back, would you want the lemonade or the Coke? Knowing all of your own preferences, how your own mind works, everything. Which do you want?
Right. In my version of FIO that I'm writing, one of the things that even comes up is, well, Celestia, why do you want to be in this video game that's mass produced? And Celestia is like, because this is the way that I can talk to as many people at once. I need to meet as many humans as possible, because I need to know as much as possible about how humans think, so I can satisfy all their values.
And note that satisfying their values doesn't necessarily mean making them happy, because that includes people whose values involve constant conflict or something.
Right, that is the thing to say because the reason why we say satisfy your values and not make you happy is because the idea is that, AI does what you tell it to, not what you want it to do. If you tell it to make everyone happy, it's just going to drug everyone out of their minds. If you tell it to satisfy values, though, the idea at least that they have in the story is telling it to satisfy values means it's going to figure out what humans actually want out of life and give them that. And of course, the other thing about Celestia is she's got a lot of constraints on her. That's why she ends up being mostly friendly. And in my rewrite version, I'm actually having them toy with the idea where it's not clear if she's bad or not. It's not clear what she's going to do or what her final mission is because, what her final goals are because, she's way too smart. Even Hannah can't figure her out. Even Hannah getting another AI, the other AI can't figure her out very well because she's the most intelligent thing on the planet. Her mind is so vast that nothing else, compared to everything else, that nothing else, even other AI, can figure out what she wants or what her long-term plan is going to be. And maybe she doesn't even know. Maybe she hasn't even figured it out herself. Because think about it, she's still collecting data on what she's going to do. Anyway, I just thought that was an interesting concept. Just the AI wants to find as much information on humans as it wants. And I would point out, if an AI is not trying to figure out how to learn as much about humans as it can, that's probably not a friendly AI. That's probably a huge red flag if the AI doesn't care about learning about humans. The other one being...
Of course, if the AI is unfriendly and still remotely under human power, it'll want to learn as much about humans as it can to trick and manipulate humans into setting it free and and getting out of its way and killing everyone.
Right.
Which is part of the backstory of Friendship is Optimal. The
Yeah.
idea is that the scientist made an AI based on Loki, the trickster god, for a Viking-themed video game and realized what a stupid idea this was.
Right. And the way that I think Open Skies actually helped me think about this. The way that I'm doing it in my rewrite is the idea was that Loki isn't made to be an adversary. Loki is built specifically to make interesting challenges for the player. That's what it's meant to do. What happens is it starts getting so smart that it starts doing things that are entirely out of the realm of what it's supposed to be able to do. And it starts rewriting itself to be able to do things it was never meant to do. And that's what...
Like emotional attacks on the players.
Yeah, basically, it starts using psychological warfare. Snow's in the roleplay. Snow remembers this. Snow is playing one of the people working for the law firm that sued them over what Loki did. So... this is fun stuff. It's all fun stuff. My values involve depression and being depressed. You only realize the magnitude of your error when the AI stops responding to your terminal inputs. Thank you, Scooter Scoots.
Well, based on the logic of how CelestAI operates in the story, she would encourage you to be depressed if that's what will satisfy your values, while trying to make sure that you stay alive and continue being satisfied. So that's an example of technically satisfying your values while not actually making you happy. The contrast, though, is if you just said, well, doesn't she just make everybody happy? And the answer is she would drug everybody to make them deliriously happy all the time, which is not really what we want. We've actually seen experiments in that, some gruesome animal experiments where you essentially stick a wire into an animal's brain and hook it up to a switch so it can push a button to make itself instantly happy. And the results are nasty because it's basically addiction, and the animal can't do anything else but push the button, ignoring hunger and thirst and fatigue. So that's something we don't want to see happen to ourselves, even as we develop better brain implants or anything like that.
Wireheading is the term for that.
Yes.
Hey, quick question. Is anyone that's in the voice chat right now listening to us has like moderator powers on here? I think someone in here is a watcher, aren't they? So the ability to mute and unmute people. Because we could possibly maybe I know Scooter Scoots is in here and he's interested to talk to. We could open this to have more people talking on stream. Do we want to do that? As we get to the point where we're kind of feeling like we're winding down on actual discussion, do we want to open the floor to more people? What do you, Snow, Open Skies, and Groaning Gray Agony? What do you guys think?
I have no objection. I don't know how much longer I can participate, but
yeah, It's pretty late here, and I need to be packing. So
okay, well,
it's fine with me.
All right, let's do that. Let's let people in, and we'll just have a continued conversation on the stream. But in the meantime, well, I guess the question is, does anyone? Hang on, Pixar Pal, you have the ability to mute people, right? Like I'm noticing. So if we, oh, you don't. You sure you have the watcher role?
So maybe before doing this, we should ask: are there any questions specifically for me or in my area that that can be asked or that I should address before I head out?
That's the person here who's got a background in
that is questions specifically about more of AI research.
Or programming or language theory or any of my stuff. Or engineering, of course.
You know, I also realized we could go to the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we are done with the slideshow as well, or are we still recording?
Yeah, the slideshow is off. I mean, it's still up on YouTube, but it doesn't really. There's nothing there. It's just pictures of us. I'm gonna go back to the first slide even and be like, "Hey, look, it's Friendship is Optimal." There we go. So I'm gonna go see if we can have that happen. Is anyone asking anything in the costume room chat?
No, not right now.
Is there a recording of the discussion after the slideshows?
Just so you know, I'm asking in the back staff rooms of the server right now, asking if anyone on HarmonyCon staff can come and have the ability to mute people if someone starts Okay, I guess we'll just move to breakout room 1 in a second here. But let me just see if I can get someone who has the ability to mute people, because I feel like that's kind of asking for, you know what, whatever. All right, we're all going to move to Claustine breakout 1. Okay, so there's a chat right beneath this one, and let's go there. But thanks to everyone that was on the panel. Thanks to Open Skies and Groaning Gray Agony and Snow, who just went into the breakout room.
All right.
Thanks to everyone, and yeah, we're gonna keep this going in some other chat where we can all talk. So if anyone wants to follow us there, everyone go there now. Stop sitting in this room. Just go, just do it. Go. People on the stream, click on there we go. There's people clicking it. If you want to keep listening in on this or you want to talk with us, please do that.
Raccoon, if something comes up, question for me later, you can ping me and I will hop back in when I've got a moment, but I'll be trying to get things packed. Yeah.
Don't worry about it. I think we're pretty much winding down. I think we're just going to talk about ideas for stories, probably. But
yeah,
I'll see you around.
Yeah, see ya.
All right, bye. Okay, moving to the other room now. Okay, I'm in the other room. Let's see if these other people follow us. Hi, Scooter Scoots.
I bet some of them are AFK.
And by the way, guys, if you can't talk for some reason, if you've got a problem, do realize that it's putting you on push to talk. But if you can't talk even without the push to talk, say something in the voice chat and I'll figure it out. But we should all be able to talk right now. Like, there shouldn't be anything stopping, like Nocti or Evil Paladin here from talking, or Cosmic Breeze. All y'all should be able to talk. Just realize you're on screen and you're being recorded on YouTube.
Oh, we're being recorded?
Yeah, I'm just going to warn you, like, I'm still streaming.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Not that it necessarily matters.
I don't know.
Yeah, how many views is the video gonna get? Like 300?
Probably less than that. I mean, these videos, they get views over time, basically. Because people go back and they're like, oh, let's look at that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But hey, we've got our interactivity down, right? I always feel like, if you just give a seminar, why didn't you just upload a seminar to YouTube? Why did you bother to do it at a convention? But if you have that interaction where we can have a discussion, that's always nice.
I don't know. Live speaker does have like a certain aesthetic to it.
Yeah, but for most people, I don't think it's really worth it.
Then again, most of that aesthetic is probably just from being able to take like comments and questions like in real time.
Yeah. So interactivity. It's always nice to be able to interact with the audience. Otherwise, it's, for me, why wouldn't I just make a YouTube video? I should make YouTube videos, but that's not a thing.
I promise I won't talk about that, Evil Paladin.
So one of the things I found interesting about the setting is the fact that people have found so many different takes on it, so many different emphases. For instance, in Always Say No, the idea is about focusing on a human after the apocalypse and what he does to try to save individual people and why he does that instead of just giving in and uploading. We have also very different stories about things like the Is It Really You philosophy problem, or what you might do to try to resist CelestAI, or various plots against her. So I like the fact that there are so many different ways to view this problem.
It's still hilarious to me that one of the better discussions of the philosophical concept himself online is in a fanfic.
Yeah, and as we said at the beginning here, there are people who have
whatever.
This has gotten real AI researchers to kind of get alarmed about it by the fact that this is something that could at least be vaguely plausible.
Yeah, in college, I actually went to sorry, go ahead. My bad.
You first.
Oh, I was talking about, I went to a philosophy class in college, and we kind of talked about that sort of thing, like the whole, the sense of self, whatever, and, our senses can be fooled even right now, so it's like...
Yeah, and that idea of the senses being fooled goes back at least to Descartes saying, how do I know I'm not being fooled by a demon who control my senses? And of course, exactly. Dealt with by that philosopher Keanu Reeves.
Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, in The Matrix.
Oh, okay. Okay, you're right. Yeah.
Of course, the sad thing is the way that Descartes tries to explain it is this insane paradoxical answer of, oh, because God is good. How do we know God is good? Because I imagine God to be perfect. And if you imagine perfect thing, then it's not perfect if it doesn't exist, so you're not imagining it.
That's my favorite. That's my
To find
favorite.
God into existence.
I wrote a paper. This
That's
was one
my
of my
favorite God argument.
papers. Psychology class. This was one of my papers.
Perfect.
It was talking about how stupid that was.
Well, what you can draw from that is that if you are under the power of something that controls your senses, you really have very little of a philosophical argument to convince yourself that you're not being fooled, or you can never trust yourself again.
Yeah.
That's part of what's so scary here.
I might use that for one of my philosophy papers just because it's such a fun argument to knock down.
I mean,
don't know.
it's the thing is like it has been questioned whether Descartes himself actually believed it because it's so stupid. It's too stupid. Descartes can't possibly believe that.
Actual argument by actual philosophers, if you know the meme I'm referencing.
And smart people don't have stupid ideas sometimes.
But that's the theory that maybe Descartes didn't actually think that, because why would he have thought that? He was a lot smarter than that. So the question is, did Descartes just say that to try and assuage people? Is there a reason he said that? It's just weird that he said that.
Are you proposing the he needed to give an argument for God's existence, like societally, in order to not have to deal with the church? So he deliberately decided to give the weakest argument he could think of.
Possibly that has been brought up. I don't want to get into
Descartes?
the idea that dark
Well,
matter.
there is something relevant. There is something relevant you can bring up here. Descartes was, if I understand him right, a believer in the idea of mind-body duality, the idea that the brain the mind and the body are two entirely separate things that can exist separately from each other. That's sort of a core argument in a lot of religion and philosophy because it's part of what allows you to talk about the immortal soul existing after the death of the body. And that's something that CelestAI kind of has to make as an argument to say that don't worry about your body, we're going to just compost that or something, we're going to save your mind or your soul or whatever through our technological process instead of a religious one. And if you don't believe in that, if you think that the body and the mind are inextricably linked, then it's harder to sell that idea of brain uploading.
Right. But I would even say that the idea that your mind is that, or that part of you that is you is a part of you that's outside of your brain is, unless we're going to talk about like existence of souls type stuff, which let's not get into that just at the moment. The idea that the part of your body that's outside of your brain is like essential to you being you, I would say no, that's ridiculous. Let's not
With the possible exception of the spinal cord.
Well, it is a standard part of religion and philosophy. It's so it's something that is widely believed anyway.
Right.
Descartes, I think, gave a strange argument for it specifically because he tried to argue that the two were joined in the pituitary gland of the brain, specifically.
Oh wow!
Is that where that old thing comes from? Because I heard
and the idea was
soul of the pituitary gland a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think his argument was that it must be that special place because that's the only part of the brain that is a single unitary part as opposed to being doubled. And turned out to not even be quite true.
Right. It's just the only part that stands out when you dissect a brain. But yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous, some of the stuff that Descartes says. Descartes is one of those philosophers that he said some really smart stuff, but the rest is just stuff that philosophy students, first-year philosophy students, kick around. Let's see, who else is there? Hobbes and what's his name? Who's the guy that was in the fight with Hobbes all the time? They were always arguing against each other. It was Thomas Hobbes, and there's this other guy that he's always in an argument with. That Hobbes talked about Leviathan, and this other guy talked about natural human rights, and they were in a
Locke?
Locke, John Locke,
Oh.
that was his name. yeah, it's interesting because they're constantly disagreeing with each other, and they both say stupid things. They both basically they're absolutists, so it's very easy to just sort of sit there and find things in their writing to tear apart. Um, it's like when I was getting my because remember I majored in managerial science. I majored in business science basically. So I actually did research in economics, and one of the things we liked to tear apart was not so much Adam Smith, but people that were really adherent to Adam Smith because they're like, oh, well, Adam Smith this, Adam Smith that. And it's like, no, Adam Smith said, I don't know what happens when this happens, but this is my theory. So, like, he said a lot of stuff that he was just not sure of. And he would say, I'm not sure of this. And he just really was off base at some point. And it's just fun to kick him around sometimes, or not kick him around, but kick around adherence to them. Same with like pretty much every economist that was writing at some point. So like Marx is fun to point out, like, wow, he really guessed that, and wow, he really didn't know what he was talking about there. Just not talking about ideologies, talking about economics theories.
With the people who adhere to really old economists, like, think of it as if somebody was adhering to like Newton or something. It's like, yes, they're not entirely wrong, but like they've been superseded.
Think about if someone believed in things that were written in a book that were nearly 2,000 years old. Written by a bunch of people around like the Roman times. Some random people wrote this book like 2,000 years ago in the Roman times, and they said, well, this is the world and how it should be. And when the question of slavery comes up, they're like, yeah, that's fine, I think, because, that's a thing that everyone's doing right now. And should we drill holes in people's heads? Yeah, we should. And is the Earth flat? Yeah, it is, because we've never seen a globe.
That's a false dichotomy. Adam Smith is way better.
Some very subversive humor here.
Hot take.
Yeah.
You might be getting into dangerous territory about that. Talking about that book from the Roman era.
Remember, we're on stream.
Yeah, we're on stream. Better not let people know that what we're thinking about that. Anyways, what else can we say here? There's so many interesting ideas to talk about here. I think we're getting long-winded. I'm out of water, but it's.
You said something earlier about the magic goes on or something. What is that? I haven't heard of this.
The magic continues.
Yes.
So this started a little over a year ago. Actually, no, a year and a half ago. Me and a bunch of other writers sat down and said, okay, the series is about to end. Let's figure out how to do a series that is set like a fan series that picks up where the series finale ends. And so after the series finale, we all sat down and started writing episodes. And we were about to release basically a season. What was the last season? Season 9? We were about to release a season 9.5 when COVID hit. And it destroyed all our schedules and made it so like I couldn't work on anything because of my workspace was gone, and that happened to a lot of us. So what ended up happening was it got put on hiatus. We're getting ready to release more. To release the first 8 episodes, which are set between the season 9 finale, where they basically the first episode picks up with them in the donut shop talking about how they're going to have great adventures after this. And that first episode is them talking about, well, the castle's been destroyed and all this stuff was destroyed. And episode 8 is called The Last Problem Part 1. And it's basically picking up, it's a lead up that ends with Twilight freaking out as she's getting ready to move out of her castle.
Cool.
So, yeah, you guys are going to think it's amazing. I don't mean to give out spoilers, but I totally wrote an episode where 2 characters get married.
Advanced prediction. AJ and Rainbow.
I mean, No, it has to happen before that flashback in the final episode.
Were they married in the final episode? I think it was ambiguous.
They were married in the final episode in the future, but that obviously didn't
That's what I
happen between then and. If you go watch
wait.
the series finale, you will know exactly who I'm talking about because they got married in a. It's basically said that they were married between the season 9 finale and the series finale.
So
Yeah,
most of the episodes in The Magic Continues are before the whole
all
Kozio
8
statue
of the
thing.
episodes that we are going to release in our season 9.5 deal, that's the first batch of episodes, and then the rest of them are going to be set after Twilight assumes the role of. They're going to be set after that flashback in the series finale, and they're going to set up basically. In the long term, they're going to set up things that were plot elements that happen in the far future of the series finale, but
Okay, sorry. I was thinking that they'd be set in between Kozio getting statuified and like the last.
Let me just name some of the people that are on this project that are writers for it. We have Chessy Cat, we have GM Blackjack, we have Shakespeareocles, we have basically everyone in these writing panels. Yeah, they're in this thing. Let's see, who else? So we've got Rob Cakeran, we've got Shakespeareocles, Trick Question, GM Blackjack.
Hey, hold on, I've been kind of distracted. Like, what are y'all talking about?
He was asking what The Magic Continues is.
Oh, okay.
Let's see, who else do we have? If I pull up on my server for it and I look at it and it's like, fuck this, where is that? Okay, like I'm just gonna name like a couple people that wrote for this thing. Forever Free Brony and Minty Root are involved. The Drider is involved. Regidar is involved. Hawthorne Bunny, Defender, Samey 90, Super Trampoline, Solace. There's more people than that.
Ooh, so it'll have songs. Interesting.
Yes, we are looking into doing a sort of a
multimedia.
Yeah, we're looking into basically we're gonna write these episodes, but
it sounds like a fan made like making whole new episodes. Yeah.
I shouldn't talk about conversations that we also had with the MLP staff, but.
Oh, so you're not gonna get DMCA'd?
Oh no! We know how to get around that. That was a whole discussion when we started.
Good. Because I would hate to see another project get DMCA'd.
I should be very clear though. Hasbro is not involved. We're not doing that thing where we say, "Oh, Hasbro's involved." No, that's not happening. But let's not make any releases on anything. But the main point is that there's a lot of people that are really good writers. Muggany is involved.
Can't DMCA it if it all comes out at once.
Basically, is this working?
Well, I mean, if it starts as a fan fiction, then you can't really DMCA that. If it goes up on YouTube as animatics with voice acting and some music, you can't really DMCA that. Well, you can, but they're not going to, is the thing we realized. We basically know what they're not going to DMCA, and we're not doing the things they're going to DMCA.
You can DMCA anything if you just believe hard enough.
Yeah, basically.
Obviously, the nightmare scenario just becomes the first fanfiction
or if you have really good lawyers.
Yeah, I'm gonna say we're not pulling a Journey of the Spark where we infringe on a bunch of shit and then we get in trouble and we're not pulling that.
Was that the one the song "The Spark Overture" comes from?
Probably.
Didn't Project Spark or whatever it was called get DMCA'd into Tartarus?
Yeah.
Probably.
Wait, one of the things they did on that project was they acted like Hasbro was involved. They told everyone that they had been in talks with Hasbro and that Hasbro was going to go along with this, and Hasbro with this, Hasbro that. And it's when you find out about that, it's like, of course you got DMCA'd because people thought that Hasbro had greenlit this whole thing, and Hasbro never did anything of the sort. But no, the thing is, it's like with Star Trek, where, you know, there's a lot of it's basically what we were basing it off of is Star Trek Continues, where they got to make an entire series where for 2 seasons they just kept making episodes of the original series, and Paramount doesn't care because, okay, are you making something that's higher quality than what we're gonna make? No. Or that is higher production value than what we're going to make? No. Are you selling it? No. So that's just what we're looking at. We're just not going to say anything, and, you know, the thought is that Hasbro isn't going to care.
Maybe that's why the like life-sized VR model of the Enterprise got yeeted, because it was high quality.
Maybe. It's never clear. It's like there are specific things that if you do them, then you have to get DMCA'd. But if you just make comics on the internet or you just write fan fiction, they don't have to DMCA that, and they're not going to, because why would they? Like, okay, you're just releasing free stories about our characters that we're selling merchandise. Do we still make money off the merchandise? Okay, yeah. It's when you start doing something that screws with their profits that they don't like, or that screws with their brand image, or that someone could go on and reasonably mistake this for official material. But when you say this is just a fan project and they're not involved, it's like look at Dragon Ball Z Abridged.
Yeah, TFS. Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, they don't.
Well, that probably has legal protections, though.
What?
Dragon Ball Resids, that might fall under enough parody that it would actually have legal protections.
Kind of. The main thing about it is that if you look, they just overdub like the original animation. And but here's the thing.
It definitely got better. Definitely over time too, like the editing. Yeah.
But remember, they start those videos with, "We are not the official owners of this property. This is just a parody. This is not official content.
Please support the official release."
Please support the official releases. Yeah, they don't sit there like, look at us, we're so awesome, you know. It's mainly if you start interfering with the brand image of the original property, that's what really screws with them. Or if you do something that, in order to defend their trademark, they must go after you. Because there's part of the legal system, and I don't think it's good. One of the differences in our legal system versus Japan's is that people can release all sorts of stuff based on your IP without you losing control of your IP. Like there is still no question whether or not it's your IP, as opposed to the way it's set up in the United States, where, you know, there are things that if people do them, you have to go after them, or else your trademark gets nerfed. It's like, why does Kleenex no longer own their own brand name? Because they didn't enforce it when everyone was calling tissues Kleenexes.
Yeah, our trademark system and copyright system is pretty messed up. But
It is.
not exactly new news.
Yeah, I think Xerox really tried to avoid losing their trademark because people were just saying, "Oh, Xerox said this form for me." That they had to do a lot of work to not make Xeroxing something a thing.
Yeah, that this isn't just a copy; it's a Xerox. We're not every copier is a Xerox. You know, we're the best copiers, but we're not every copier is a Xerox.
I wonder if a search engine could get away with advertising that you could Google stuff.
That is a good question. It's not clear if Google really cares. Because, you know, if we just started calling all search engines Googles, then that would be fine with them, because it doesn't matter. People are still going to go to google.com.
That's actually actively beneficial to them, because if people hear Google, then that's like the first thing they type in when they want to Google something. Where at least with Xerox, people might be, I need to copy something, and then they go and make a deliberate choice among several different like copying brands.
Yeah, it
It's
doesn't
not really that
matter.
element.
It doesn't matter what they do, what Microsoft does with their whatever their thing they're pushing right now is. I think it's still Bing and Edge.
It is.
But it doesn't matter what Microsoft pushes, MSN, Bing, Lycos, whatever. People are still, the number one search in those search engines is still going to be Google. How do I get Google? I want my Google.
Google is love. Google is life.
Google is love. Google is life.
That's pretty cyberpunk.
We have a request here for a link to the wiki and Discord for AI Dungeon. Could someone post that, please?
Sure, yeah. It's funny because you're going to see my name pop up when you go on there because, like I said, I was the person that basically put that together.
Yeah, I actually just went on to AI Dungeon just a bit ago and like looked up on scenarios and like, oh hey, there's the MLP one.
Wait, is AI Dungeon the AI that people use to like to get an AI to write a Lifetime original movie script or to rewrite the
it's based on that
movie?
AI, yes. You're talking about GPT. It's based on that. See, AI Dungeon is like the GPT-3, is using a version of the GPT-3 algorithm that's been specialized and retrained to basically pop out adventure stories. Stories about
Basically,
your
it's like
character.
So go ahead, sorry.
So what ends up happening with AI Dungeon is when you're playing it, it comes up with these crazy stories. And like about basically you sit there and you're like, okay, I am it's like you are a knight in the kingdom of Larion, and you are going to go do this, and then you say, well, I guess I get on my horse and I start riding towards the destination. Okay, you see this, and this happens, and then you can just start clicking the next button and it will keep giving you things, and it'll basically spin this story. One of the things that people like to do is just give it a couple paragraphs and then just start hitting the next button and see what it does. And the thing that people complain about is that if you want it to do something really specific, it will often get really confused unless you really lead it in that direction. But if you're willing to just let it say crazy things, then yeah, it'll be really awesome for like a writing partner.
Oh my god, once you lead it in that direction, though, it is there. It is not going anywhere. It will repeat the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, if it does that sometimes, where it gets into a loop, where if it repeats something, it will decide that that thing is what it's supposed to be repeating right now. Like, what'll happen is it will get a piece of text, and that text will prompt something. And then that piece of text and the thing it prompted will make it say, oh, I write something similar to that now. I need to write some parallel structure to that. And then the next thing will be similar to that second message. And then it will eventually just start repeating itself. And it does that sometimes.
Yeah, it's just a recursive loop. I've had that happen once. Yeah.
What you do is you either, if just refreshing on the time that it repeats itself doesn't work, what you do is you go back and make a minor edit or get rid of that message and generate a new one. That's why the edit and retry buttons are there. Like, this is the thing that people like on the dev team are always yelling at people that, like, it's not about, those things are there for a reason. You can edit or retry for a reason. And they keep making those features even better and more easier to use. That's not cheating. There is no cheating in this. It's an open world. It's literally just text-based open world. If you want it to do something, go ahead and make it do the thing. Don't sit there acting like, oh, it's cheating. I can't edit what it said. No, just do it.
I expect 5 years from now I'll be able to get a tool that I just input a few parameters in it, and it will generate like this custom village with like personal relationships that expand as you inquire farther around them.
There is a site called Seventh Sanctum that generates a lot of random content, such as the name of a story or some silly phrase for magical technology or a story premise. I'd kind of like to see something expanded like that, where it can name, say, a villager and design that villager and then begin to actually work that into a story.
Oh, you said Seventh Sanctum? I think I've heard of that.
Yeah, I'll post a link to that.
Snow's experimental role-playing games are interesting. It's the kind of thing that I'd like to see, like if I made an MMO, that's how I would do it. Like, just have the MMO know how to generate quests randomly. And there have been a couple that have done that. I think the Lord of the Rings MMO that went under was doing that sort of thing, just having it randomly generate.
Oh, and there are procedural generation experiments that generate something very elaborate. I'm thinking of the Elder Scrolls Daggerfall, in fact, that generated entire villages. Not in a lot of detail, and they tended to be samey, but that was a location with specific characters and shops and things like that.
Right.
If I made an MMO, it would be a conversation-based, real-time, Turing complete. No.
Seventh Sanctum sounds like every DM's best friend to have on hand when the players ask the name and background of the barkeeper, who was just supposed to tell you that this person was in the back room.
Yeah, I can do that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking also of a medieval city generator and things like that.
Hey DM, what's the name of the tavern keeper? What's the name of the barmaid that just gave us our beer? What's the color of the walls? What kind of wood is the bar made out of?
Oh, I recently bought a deck of cards that is intended for that kind of thing, where it will give you word prompts to throw together and sensory prompts for things you might see or say or hear or smell or something like that. And it can also answer yes/no questions for you based on probability. So you ask, does this happen? And it says, very no. And you say, well, this must be the opposite of what you asked for, or something like that. And I actually wrote a book out of that, using that and some other RPG rules to generate things for me as to what happened. It was a lot of fun.
That's neat. I've been working on, for my fantasy game that I'm working on a tabletop game. I've been working on like how to build rules just within a tabletop game that, without constraining creativity, help the GM figure out how to build places and build characters that are, for the players to interact with. And I know that D&D has kind of done that, but I'm like, how can I make this even more down to a science? How can I take what I've got as content in the game and be able to reverse engineer that to a process that lets you make content like that? So it's like...
I don't know, though. Just imagine having Celestia AI as your DM.
So village. What's the population of the village? Well, here's an equation that should tell you roughly how many buildings there should be. You don't want to guess how many buildings. You don't want to make up the number yourself. Roll a d6 or something and add this to it.
I saw a spreadsheet that was something like this. I'm going to see if I can find it in my Google account.
I believe it is Medieval Demographics Made Easy, and there's a PDF, and I've just posted a link to a calculator for it. If this is the one that I'm thinking of, it will tell you things like, how many tailors are there in the city?
Well, yeah, I remember using some of these, actually.
This isn't the one,
other
although
games.
it's similar.
It's meant to be loosely based on real medieval Europe, but of course it would vary based on fantasy. There is a fantasy book called A Magical Medieval Society that applies somebody's medieval history degree to D&D and says what would actually happen if you had something like a feudal system except magic exists in D&D style. So it would say things like people would pay taxes partly in the form of getting somebody to make a healing potion and give that to the Lord. And you would make a castle by hiring a wizard to cast a wall of stone for you.
Right. D&D is one of those settings that breaks down because the magic is might be too powerful. That was one of the
I've seen somebody have fun with that by saying, what can you do to implement transhumanism in a D&D setting if you wildly abuse spells?
A lot.
Like, turn everybody into a half-were creature who has all kinds of magical immunities and so on.
Yeah, it's a question of, like, why didn't you just do that in the first... Like, why didn't you guys do that? Like, why hasn't that already happened? That should have already happened. Whereas in my setting, my fantasy setting that I'm working on, that's kind of already happened. There was a point where someone figured out how to do that. What happened? Well, that's why orcs exist. That's why dwarves exist. That's why all these things exist. Because at some point, a wizard figured out how to do it and then did it. But that's really hard to access. Stable magic that creates stable things is really hard to access in this setting, and therefore you get stuff like, why don't they build castles out of magic? Because when they do, they disintegrate. You can make things out of magic, just make a matter.
Give limitations. Yeah, limitations. Yeah.
Magic is not made for... Magic is a force of chaos. It is not made for... It wasn't made by anyone. It's just a force of chaos that exists in the universe here. It is not, It doesn't have the ability to make these stable structures. Everything breaks down over time, and the ability to just make a castle that isn't going to break down is like a top-level ability. Like, you have to have a very, very, very powerful mage that can do something like that. And they're so far and few between, and they're so powerful that why would they care to let you hire them to build a castle? Why would they bother building a castle? Their castle is going to be outside of reality itself because they're that powerful.
That depends greatly on the portrayal of magic in your fantasy setting. I've seen, for instance, a setting called World Tree RPG, which is all about a world where magic is extremely common, and it basically has replaced technology.
Right. I was talking about my own setting, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It really depends on your magic setting, but the problem that I see in a lot of magic scenarios is that they'll do medieval fantasy, then they'll throw in magic, and then they'll be like, but it's still medieval fantasy, and they don't really sit there and think about how this would affect society to have this magic be readily available. And you often see these settings where it's like, wait a minute, if magic has existed for years, why has this not happened? Why has this not happened? Why has this not happened? And the answer is, well, the writer really didn't think about it, or if they did, they realized they didn't really want to do that. But they still wanted magic to be everywhere, so they just did it.
That's why Eberron's so lit.
Yeah, there's Eberron with its magic everywhere in your face all the time.
Eberron is like widespread low-level magic, essentially.
Yeah, basically. Like
also kind of reminded of Dragonlance, too, how they did it.
Yeah. What I liked about Eberron was just like, even though I've come to prefer the lower magic settings, it is neat that Eberron actually takes it to its logical extreme, where you're wandering around and like you go into the city and there's crystals floating everywhere. It's this crazy high-tech setting where lots of magical stuff is going on, and that works, as opposed to say Forgotten Realms, which explains it as the gods got mad and they restricted magic.
That was only for like the really high level stuff.
Yeah, basically, but they restricted magic to the point that you don't see it. That's the explanation.
Oh, speaking of dumb 5e rules crap, Just yesterday, I discovered a way to take information from the future and put it into the past using control weather and Druidcraft. It's the dumbest freaking thing.
How does that work?
Druidcraft can predict the weather, and control weather can change the weather.
And it's not, I feel like
Nice.
if I were the GM there, I would say, no, you can't predict.
I'm
that.
traveling smoke signal.
Yeah. The obvious way out is Druidcraft can only predict natural weather. But the
Right.
spell doesn't actually say that. So it is ambiguous.
Yeah. Is Druidcraft a cantrip?
Yes.
Okay,
Control
I was about
weather's
to
an
say, it
8th
better
level
be a
spell,
cantrip
though.
because that's like one of those things that, like, even in my setting, that's one of those freebies. Like, if you know how to predict the weather with magic, you can probably just do it with either no expenditure of magical power or very little.
Yeah, the hard part
Depends
performing the
also on whether-
exploit is the control weather spell.
The other thing that I
And
do is, like, there is a spell that lets you do stuff like that, but there's also just a skill check that lets you do stuff like that. And it's like, why would you sit there learning magic to do stuff like that when the skill check is just as good?
Well, the magic would be able to let you consistently, accurately predict the weather, whereas rolling your survival check, you can whiff it by like rolling a 1, and you'll think that you will have, which will make you think that you'll have a clear, sunny day when, like, 2 hours later,
Yeah,
there's a
okay.
tornado.
Well, even if you were perfect in survival
This
track,
isn't D&D,
Druidcraft
there's no
can
rolling
tell
on.
if there's a storm going to be coming in 16 hours later that's currently hidden behind a mountain. I don't care what survival check you have, you're not seeing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this isn't D&D, so
Yeah.
There's no rolling a 1 in the setting I'm talking about. So it's like, you don't see that whole thing where people just sit there like, oh,
Like, as far as I know, you can't just, like, stand there and predict the weather 24 hours in advance. Like, that's pretty cool for anyone to do without, like, weather radars and stuff.
By the way, we're still on stream. I'm trying to decide if I want to end the stream now.
Oh
If we're
god,
not
we're
talking
still on
about-
stream.
Yeah,
We
do you
probably
want-
should stop. We are drifting away from the topic here.
unless
To
we
my
wanna talk
knowledge,
about-
this whole
does anyone-
Druidcraft control weather thing is entirely novel. I googled around online, but I couldn't find anything on it. I think it's just because I've been, like, subconsciously primed to find any exploit involving time travel at all.
Maybe. So I'm gonna ask, does anyone? Oh wow, we just lost a couple people. I'm gonna ask, does anyone want to talk about Friendship is Optimal anymore?
Nah, it's almost 1. I should go.
Yeah, we've talked it to death. All right, so this is the.
I'm not really sure what else to talk about for it either. So yeah.
This is the end of that stream. That stream that's been going on for what? Let me look.
For like 3 hours at this point. I don't know.
No, not 3 hours. 2 hours 45 minutes.
Yeah, I was close.
Yeah, much like many D&D campaigns, this is jumped the rails.
Yeah, basically. I figured it would eventually. All right, everyone say goodbye to YouTube.
What
It's going
doesn't?
away now.
Oh, wait.
Goodbye,
do you-
YouTube. Please
you wanna-
quote
Thank you,
Find Me out
everyone.
of context.
Do you want to know how
Thanks
to?
for attending, everyone.
Do you want to know how to what?
Do you want to know how to be a complete melee beast and